Hello, everybody. Welcome to a late night edition of UGASports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young and Jim Donnan. Jim Donnan is, of course, the former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, and he is the main reason everybody's tuned in tonight at 9:30 on a Thursday. We're up past Coach's bedtime, which is a lie. He's up later than probably all of us. But we've had we rescheduled the show a few times because we were going to do it Tuesday. Got a couple of coaches to talk to on Tuesday. We're going to do it Thursday during the day. Got a couple coaches to talk to. So we've got a lot of assistant coaches that we don't normally get. Usually Kirby Smart doesn't let a lot of other guys talk. He likes to control the message. He also likes to meet with the media, answer questions, and let his coaches do their thing. So, but this week he had 4 coaches meet with the media, 3 offensive coaches, 1 defensive coach, and we have clips that Dayne has cut up, and so we will talk about those. Coach, the team has been practicing. They had their first day in pads recently. This coming Saturday, they have the first scrimmage, and we ask you this every year. But what can we expect? What are we going to see this week as they transition through fall camp? You know, they're in pads now, and as they go into that first scrimmage.
Yeah, one of the biggest things you want to do is evaluate how guys do 11-on-11 full speed with the tackling. They've had a lot of drills that are similar to what a game situation will be, but putting guys on the ground, fending off blocks, people coming at you low, all that stuff, you want to see how you can react to that on defense and how you can get lined up on offense and take care of your assignments, but also show some discipline as far as snap count. And about 3 series apiece, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, where they'll go 10 to play drive. And then the rest of the time it'll be interspersed with some kicking situations and then similar situations that you see in a game, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 8, red zone, low red zone, high red zone, coming out when the ball's backed up. And 2-minute offense, they'll go finish the practice with 2-minute offense. So all in all, it's just a really good chance to evaluate your players, evaluate your team, find out how much depth you really have, see how the specialists work under pressure in the stadium, and pretty much it. But it's you can't afford to do it more than twice because it's just too much of a risk to lose a guy because of an injury in a. But you can't not scrimmage because then you really don't evaluate your team because you're not playing a lot on 11, 7-on-7 stuff. So see how they tackle.
Dayne, I was thinking about the scrimmage, and we got to speak to Dell McGee today, and I asked him one of the questions about, you've got 3 running backs committed. How did you sell that? He said, well, it's not hard to sell running at the University of Georgia, but getting 3 guys just gets us back up to our number of running backs. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good point. And then I was asking in our group chat, I'm like, wait a minute, they got 5 scholarship running backs. He said they have an allotment of 6, but 3 of those running backs on scholarship are banged up. We broke the news that Kendall Milton has a little hamstring injury. He wasn't out there the other day for the, when while the media was out there. I understood he came back in later on. Andrew Paul's coming off of an ACL. You got Branson Robinson, who will be out for a while to start the season. I'm like, it's a little tight to run scrimmages to run 11-on-11. As Coach says, if you do it more than a couple times, you got to get to the finish line.
But that's not how he answered your question at first, because these coaches constantly think in 2 ways: the season in front of them, but then also the program as a whole. And so the first way that he answered your question was, and Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards aren't going to be here next year. So we need to go ahead and have guys ready to go for when they're gone and out of here. But you're right. But I look at this as you kind of know what you have with Kendall Milton when he's healthy. I think you feel good about Branson Robinson when he's healthy. You need to see something from Andrew Paul when he's able to go full speed, which doesn't seem like it's quite yet, but that's coming along. And so these reps are really, really valuable for if Dayne Edwards is your number one running back for a month. Can he handle that workload? I think he can. If Cass Jones needs to get carries early in a game to set a tone, what does that do for Georgia's offense? Because that's not something they've relied on before. Roger Robertson's a true freshman. Is he ready for that spotlight? Those are all things that I think scrimmages help dictate early on.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing you got to be careful.
May have lost coach there for just a second.
Yeah, I think his modem went to bed. So I know you got some video clips that you pulled from all four coaches that we got to speak to this week. Who do you want to start with?
Let's start with Dell McGee and the running back injury situation because we're just talking about it. So that's an easy transition into what he said about Dayne Edwards and Cass Jones getting a lot of the reps right now.
Guys have having to take a bigger load. Speaking of Dayne Edwards and Cass Jones, even our walk-on Savon Clark, his workload has increased due to our injuries. But at the same token, it's my job to prepare who's ever available, who's ever healthy, to perform at a high level.
So essentially, you got a coach who's there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't want to be like, well, duh, coach, but I did mention the fact that, he's had to deal with guys like that before. I thought he had a very good defense of Kendall Milton saying, look, nobody's out here trying to get hurt, just he's had bad luck. And people were asking, what is his mindset when he gets kind of hurt? And that's really been, I guess, for the first 2 weeks, that's been kind of the news. Early on, it's always, how do the freshmen look? How big are they? Who's grown? Who's gotten taller? Who's gotten thicker? Who's gotten faster? We don't get to see a ton of that. But the number one thing that comes out of the first couple of weeks of camp is who's injured. We always want to, what's going on, because that's a big deal. And the fact that Kendall Milton, who's fought injuries his whole time, his whole career, nothing ridiculous, nothing as bad as what Andrew Paul went through, but just there's always some small little nagging thing. But when he's healthy, he's a monster. So that was kind of the story of the first couple of weeks of camp. And I thought that he made a good point. He's like, look, you guys will obsess about this, but I still got to. I've got to practice. We got two spots going on. We got 11 on 11 over here and 11 on 11 over there, and I've got to be able to run these guys. I did not get to ask the next question though that I wanted to. Is like, "Hi, coach, who else are you working at running back?"
Well, they did tell us last year that Brock Bowers has taken snaps there, though I don't think that Georgia has enough experience at tight end. It would have to be a very dire situation for Bowers to get carries from that spot.
Back there, Zeed Haynes. I mean, you got some freshmen you brought in that are absolute burners.
Is Darius Senior in the chat? Give Darius the ball, see what happens. I don't know. There's a ton of dudes that I know that if they got in the open field, they'd score.
Yeah, well, especially running behind that offensive line. So. I thought he made a good point. He's like, look, as you said, I gotta cook with what I got. So it's old hat for him, and it has helped. And one of the questions I asked him was, look, when you first got here, you had a couple older guys, that knew what they were doing. But then you brought in a bunch of freshmen, and you've been on his year 8. He's been through this cycle a bunch of times. I asked him, what's the hardest thing to teach him? Zero hesitation. He mentioned pass blocking, pass protection. He said that we're not as big as the linebackers that are coming after us. The non-verbal communication between the center, the quarterback, and the tailback, knowing who's going to get who, which side you need to be on, what's going to happen. And I'm thinking, what do we see the freshmen struggle with? Which is the only reason I'd be worried about putting Andrew Paul out there, or Cass Jones, or Savon Clark, or anybody else, that's not named Dayne Edwards or Kendall Milton, or Branson Robinson. I'm like, those, Roderick Robinson's brand new, but if you got a headhunter coming after Carson Beck, will he step up and do it? And we've always seen the freshmen struggle with that.
I want to remind people the institutional knowledge that comes with Dell McGee at this point, because there are 2 coaches at UGA that have been there the entire time that Kirby Smart has been there. And that is Dell McGee and Glenn Schumann. And there's been turnover everywhere else on that coaching staff. And that matters a lot, especially in recruiting. I think that's one reason he has as much confidence as he does with recruiting, because he's been there from the beginning to see what Georgia was. The funny part to me, Roddy, if you remember, in 2015, Dell McGee did coach in Sanford Stadium, but it was with Georgia Southern. And it was that game that went to overtime that he was an assistant coach for Willie Fritz. And Georgia Southern should have won that game. And I interviewed Dell McGee before that game, and he said, I'm glad to be here. We're coming here to win. I think I can be a head coach one day. That's my goal, and I still think that's his goal. He's been very valuable for Georgia, and Georgia's lucky to have kept him as long as he's been here. Dell's a superstar in coaching.
Yeah. Coach, give us your thoughts on it.
On Dell McGee, Coach.
Yeah, I've been around Dell for the last 8 years. I've seen him, his contributions invaluable on the field, off the field, every way possible in the community. A great father and husband. He's really a guy that Kirby leans on in so many ways outside of the day-to-day football. I mean, he really does have a lot of ability to think into the future. The kids really look up to him. And, he just got a real good feel for how to handle the players during the game. And he's very capable of being the head coach when Kirby's not around, just like several of those guys are. So he's very Kirby's always around, but I'm talking about certain things that you got to do. But just one of the top coaches in the country.
Now, Roddy, specifically, one thing with Dell McGee that was asked was, you don't have Kenny McIntosh anymore. Who can catch the football out of the backfield? Here's what he said.
All of our guys have improved in that area, and we can't let our injuries or not being there be an excuse to not catch the ball. When their numbers called in the passing game, they're expected to catch it and answer the bell.
So he pretty much said everybody can catch it.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of your MO here when you're recruited. But some guys have better skills than others. Now, if it's a routine play that you're lined up in the backfield, catch a screen pass or catch a little delay, that's one thing. But shifting out and being a wide receiver like we do, we've shown with Cook and McIntosh now, that takes a real special talent, that multi-purpose back, kind of like Frazier kid we just had committed here, that can play what they call all-purpose back, not just first and second down. But I'm concerned about these injuries. I mean, I'm one of the most positive persons around here, but when you've got 3 of your top 5 guys have some injury situations, and none of them have been the bell cow anyhow. I guess Edwards has run more snaps than anybody. Then that concerns you. But if Branson Robinson can play anywhere near what he did when he did play, then he could be that. Milton's shown he can be that. Andrew Paul can do that, but you just don't know. But I would say at this point, that's got to be the biggest question mark on our team. To me, is the health of our running backs and how they're going to be ready to go by the South Carolina game, hopefully.
Yep. Let's move on to another coach, because we got a lot of coaches to get through, which thank you, Kirby Smart. I appreciate it. I give Kirby 9 types of hell for not giving us enough access, but he let us watch part of practice this week, and we got to speak to 4 of his assistant coaches. So, and I'll tell you, people were very excited to watch the Todd Hartley videos. They were excited to watch Mike Bobo's return, if you will. And I told people, go watch Dell McGee. And if you don't think Glenn Schumann is a diabolical mastermind when it comes to defense, if you watch his interviews, all of these are on our UGASports YouTube channel. If you're a Georgia fan, take the time to watch them. You'll be very pleased.
Well, let's go to Glenn Schumann, a guy who in the offseason did have an interview to potentially be a coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. Not uncommon. Here's what he had to say about it.
When you're successful, opportunities come for everybody. Opportunities come for players. Opportunities come for coaches. And it was an honor to be considered and to be reached out to by them. And I appreciate it. And that's about all that I went through that process, and I'm glad to be where I am.
Sounds pretty happy to be at Georgia, but still needed to see what was out there when the interviews come for him. Good experience, it sounded like.
He's very deserving. He's a tremendous young coach, and he got 900,000 reasons to stay here too. Added on to his salary, which is nothing wrong with that either. I think that's one thing that all coaches, when somebody else wants you and is ready to pay you that much money, you've got to. He earns every cent of it. He's very deserving of it. All our coaches are. I mean, these coaches aren't overpaid. I mean, if you want to compete on the level that we got to compete, you got to have coaches beside players. You got to have a guy that's an all-conference coach coaching your linebackers. And if there's anybody in the conference that's all-conference there, look at the guys he's putting out. He brings them in here. He recruits them. He trains them. He's been with Kirby since he was a student assistant at Alabama. He knows the system inside and out. And I never will forget when he was first hired here, when he was coming over here with Coach Tucker from the defense, and a couple guys referred that I knew were talking about the staff, and they said, well, there's one guy he's bringing that's a rising star. Glenn Schumann's going to be an outstanding coach, and he's going to be ready to go, even though he hasn't been a full-time coach. I did the same thing. I brought a guy from Marshall here, Greg Atkins, who had never been a full-time coach, and he ended up coaching at Tennessee in the pros everywhere. You know, if you got talent, it doesn't make any difference what your experience is. I mean, particularly when you got a guy like Tucker helping you and Kirby being the head coach. So Kirby knew what he was doing bringing Schumann in here. And I will say this, that Kirby's really shown a real propensity for having a farm team-like situation where when somebody leaves, he's got somebody in the bullpen ready to go. And we have hired outside that a couple times, but for the most part, you look at the defensive transition, Tucker to Lanning to Schumann and Muschamp. I mean, that's been outstanding. And I'm just telling you right now, our defense this year is going to be hard to score on. It's going to be, I tell you something every year before the season. This defense right here, I don't know that it's impregnable, but there are going to be some pissed off coaches when somebody returns a punt for a touchdown or blocks a kick for a touchdown or you throw an interception for a touchdown, because a lot of these teams, that's the only way they're going to score.
I love it. I also I thought seeing the other teams come after Glenn Schumann, he's been a slow rising star, but when you start looking at his work and you start talking to other people in the industry, they're like, this guy's a savant. This guy is a genius when it comes to defense. He knows his stuff. And then I was trying to think of how many guys has he had drafted inside linebacker. He's got 2 Butkus Award winners, which that's huge. But I was like, wait a minute, like Tay Crowder, Natrez Patrick, Roquan Smith, then 3 guys at once. And I'm like, this. And then you bring in, to me, as impressive as all that is, the fact that you bring in 2 guys in their first year as starters in Pop and Smile Munden, and for them to have the year they did, I'm like, damn, this guy's really good. Aside from the rising star and a defensive coordinator, as a position coach, that's hard to do. It's hard to have that much success. So
yeah, I mean, you got to be, and he knows. But the overriding thing that we've got to always keep in mind here, this Kirby Smart's defense. I mean, it's what won for him. And people say Nick Saban and all that. Nick did a good job of hiring Kirby, but Kirby called the defense. He put the defense in. He did everything over there for Nick. Gary Gibbs called the defense when he was a defensive coordinator. Steele's going to call it. Nick's around, but the whole piece is that one of the things that people are looking for, whether it's graduate assistants, whether it's full-time coaches, the Georgia way is the way to go. If you can get a Georgia coach, you're going to try to get them. And Eddie Gordon went to UAB as an O-line coach from here. There's a lot of people moving around from Georgia because they know the system.
Yeah. I know. We're going to have a comment from Mike Bobo. He mentioned that, but before we get to him, you hit up that other clip.
Yeah, you transitioned into it a couple of comments ago about Smile Munden and Jamon Dumas-Johnson, because there was a unique situation where Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, these guys last year, Pop and Munden, great years and early success at Georgia, didn't quite practice as hard as they needed to at the beginning of spring, and then Kirby and Schumann had to step in. Here's what's happened since then.
From that point forward, they accepted that challenge and have elevated their game. I've been incredibly pleased with Pop through this beginning of camp. His leadership, how vocal he is, his overall effort and approach to practice stands out day to day. He's been extremely consistent, and we need that from him. He wants to be significantly better than he was last year, and he's practicing like that's what he wants to do.
He wants to be significantly better.
Well, the one thing that I hope that the fans get out of listening to our show or watching it is there are no stars at practice here. I mean, you got to produce every day, and they don't mind putting a guy in for you if you're not. I mean, and the way they know it, they watch you, but they got 3 people over there looking at that GPS all the time. And if your GPS is not meeting the standards that you're supposed to be doing, you do not want that guy to walk up to Kirby Smart and say, hey, Radi is not doing them worth the shit out here. He's not going anywhere close to his big time, his max effort. And boy, you talk about getting lambasted. So they got basically your own computer out there, and you getting checked. You better make every rep go and be going full speed, because you might get by with 1 or 2 plays where they miss it, but it won't take long. And of course the coaches can see it too, but that's not even close to the norm here. Nobody tries to get by with anything because they're too afraid to. Why would you take a chance on that and have it and not be able to play because you're not giving effort in practice? You win that opportunity by the way you perform in practice and the way you go by the standards that we have here. And I'm sure they're very similar in most places. But in regard to those 2 linebackers, they had a monumental task coming in, replacing the 3 that played, who had 3 or 4 years in the system, had a really good defensive front in front of them, all those guys. And last year we had a lot of new secondary guys, and Carter was both of them stepped up and played just really good. And as Kirby has said, there's been a lot of good linebackers here, but I can't remember anybody even close to the athleticism. Maybe Boss Bailey, Witherspoon could really run, but Small Munden, come on, that guy can. He's really. I don't even know what all he'll do when he goes to the combine, but he'll scare some people. It'll be hard for them to see those stats that he'll put. And of course, Pop can, he just deliver a blow and get it, really hit you. But these young linebackers we got too are in the same mold. Jalen Walker, all these guys are 3 freshmen. Our deep. I mean, I'm gonna stop talking about our defense. I'm gonna get laryngitis. But the only thing that worries me is our defense is gonna probably make our offense think they're not quite as good as they are because they're going against them. But the one thing that I will say here is the whole fall camp is set up to train your defense and train your offense. And the defense has the advantage in the practice sessions because they know what the offense is installing. They know the plays. And it's a pretty good scripted thing that the defensive coaches go over. Saturday, it's every man for himself. I mean, it's like a game. So they don't know exactly what Bobo's going to do. And I know the competitive edge that Mike's got. So he'll go out there and if you got a guy that's got a hurt ankle and he knows it, he's going to go after that guy in the scrimmage. I mean, that's what he's going to do. And I would too. So it's a little bit better on Saturday. I look for the offense to make Kirby mad about the defense Saturday. I'll be surprised if they don't do really well.
Kirby's mad now, Coach. We were out there watching practice.
He'll get what I mean is, game when he talked to that girl at halftime. He said, "Well, our defense isn't performing like it needs to," and he went in there and chewed their ass out. You saw what happened in the second half in that team. And but as head coach, you got to balance it up because and he's gotten better. He used to say, "Well, we're just not doing as much as we need to on defense, and they're moving the ball on us." But I used to say to May Kirby, that offense is your offense. We're moving the ball too. So he doesn't say they anymore. So, we and it's ours.
I like it. To illustrate my point about Kirby being mad already and to what you said about the GPS thing, I thought it was hilarious that he was calling out Amarius Mims, his starting right tackle, by saying,
"You're not supposed to say stuff like that that you heard it at practice, coach."
No, I mean, everybody was out there. It was in public. And he's like, we're going to check your GPS. And if you didn't get to 17 miles an hour, we're going to have words or something. It's just,
yeah, well.
So he knows how fast each guy is supposed to go.
Right.
That blows my mind. Anyway, speaking of going fast, I want to mention our friends over at Athens Ford. They got some great deals to get the vehicles on their lot moving fast. And they got the Ford Mustang, that Mach EGT. And you can get it as low as $499 a month for 48 months, $3,000 due at signing. I've been told that if you drive in that Mustang and you hit the gas, your head's going to slam back into the padded headrest there. That thing's got takeoff ability. And hey, $500 for a 2023 Ford Mustang doesn't hurt. You can get $6,000 off the 2023 Ford F-150 XL 101 STX. And 3.9% APR financing for 60 months. Check that one out. Ford F-150, best-selling vehicle best-selling truck in the nation. And of course, I'm a big Ford Explorer, guys. Everybody knows that. You get the 2023 Ford Explorer up to $4,000 off MSRP and 2.9% APR financing for 60 months for qualified buyers. Check out all the vehicles on the lot at Athens Ford. You will not be disappointed. While you're on that side of town, swing by our friends over at Academia Brewing Company. They've got a new barley wine out there. They've got a classic car show out there. They've got new lunch items, a new grilled cheesesteak sandwich out there. They got a new chicken sandwich out there for lunch. There's a motorcycle night out there. They have live music. They have Trivia Tuesdays. They have a beautiful beer garden. They have a huge rooms. I know that all the fraternities and sororities are having rush. You need to have a big event someplace. They got a whole room for that over at Academia Brewing Company. And I know, sometimes you want to have a beer or two. So hit up our friends at Academia Brewing Company. Matt Casey, huge dog fan. I've seen this guy at every major Georgia football event. He's there. He's giving out beer, to promote his brand. And that is a guy that just absolutely loves the Bulldogs. He's a Georgia graduate. So when you go out there and you have one of those giant hamburgers, you are supporting a man who supports the University of Georgia.
Mike Bobo was talking about how quarterbacks can separate themselves in scrimmages, what they need to do. Here's what he says he's looking for from his quarterbacks.
And the bottom line for a quarterback, it's, can we execute? Are you going to be able to execute and get us in the right play, get us in the right protection, run the offense, handle third down situations, red zone situations, and that's what we're looking for, handling those situations in a game and having continuity on offense.
Coach, if I've learned anything from you from the last few years of doing shows with you, it's how important it is for the quarterback to get people where they need to get to before the ball snapped.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have to do that. That always kind of made me mad when an assistant coach had a guy that didn't know where to line up because the quarterback's got so much stuff he's got to do looking at the defense. A guy should be able to break the huddle and go where he's supposed to be. But, when you got some younger guys, sometimes they don't know which side to be on or whether to be tight or what your split is and all that. And the quarterback's got to know that. But that's one thing that I don't think that's the quarterback's role, but it has to be something that you're able to do in case they don't know what to do. But the other things he was talking about, just changing the play, working on a protection, all those things are so important. And what I always try to do with my quarterback is eliminate as much thinking as he could have before the ball was snapped and then start doing all your thinking. But if you're worried about getting a snap, about if JoJo's on the right side, if we got enough players to stop their guy and all that, I mean, those are things you got to be thinking. You got to be geared in on making that play work, reading the free safety, picking out the mic, all those things. So that's what happens when you got a good team. And the saving grace for our team, regardless of who gets hurt in the backfield at running back, is our offense on an offensive line is next level. I mean, it's really and some of the second unit guys are coming around to help it. I read where Radi said something about, offensive line depth was something that worried, and it does worry me because they haven't played. But you got Green and Blasky just fighting it out there at left tackle. The other four guys are either on the first or second team all conference preseason. And then you've got guys like, Jared Wilson and Micah Morris. People don't realize how good Micah Morris is. I've seen him pancake some people just coming out on the corner, coming around there. If he was running at me, I could probably run a 4.640 because I would be running away from that guy. He's like a bowling ball coming out there. So one of the things I like to do, is be positive when I can. I said that I was worried about the backs, but I'm about as positive about this O-line being a real big advantage for whoever our quarterback is, number one, because they're not going to have to worry a lot about protection. And number two, if our running back situation is not as good as we'd like it to be, I still think we got some guys capable of making yards because they're not going to have to dodge people in the backfield. There's going to be so much movement. And we got 19 in your program, 1 in your heart. That guy is just going to be – he's just so hard to defend. I mean, you got to worry about him in so many different avenues that and the addition of those 2 transfers along with Ladd and then the guys we got, it's going to be a very explosive, big play offense. I'm hearing a lot of good things about Arian Smith's help, that he's gone through all of this stuff in the spring and fall and has really been a little more physical, but got big time speed. We got a good receiver room. It's going to be a really good offense.
Coach, one offensive lineman that you didn't mention, and I'm wondering if he has just entered the Solomon Kinley, Justin Schaefer role of, well, maybe they'll get beat out and they just never do, and they keep their spot forever. Xavier Truss is really solid on this offensive line.
I mentioned that he's one of the 4 guys that picked up preseason all-conference.
Oh, I wanted his name said, Coach. I wanted him called out.
David Truss, Cedric Van Pran, Tate Ratledge, and Marius Sims. Those are the 4. But Truss is good. I mean, I like Truss. He can play guard, tackle. I like Dylan Fairchild. I mean, I think he's rugged, man. He's one of the strongest guys we've ever had here. And he's very, he just won't get beat. He might not be quite as much leverage on somebody, but I like the fact that he, wants to be a Georgia Bulldog, and he plays hard, and he plays better with the other guys around him too, because he's not a massive guy, but those first 5 guys are massive. I'm talking about you could have an NBA team with those guys. I mean, maybe one of them would be big enough to be a center, but you got 7, 8 power forwards there. I mean, just big old guys, really. And you're talking about a guy running 17 on the GPS there, Radi? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Guys,
I mean, your center, in your hypothetical basketball team, I'd have Amarius Mims as a center, and that's the guy Kirby Smart wants running 17 miles an hour.
I just imagine this going down at Ramsey, like some poor going up against this offensive line of a basketball team.
One of the best nights I ever had just for having fun was going over and watch Champ Bailey on the play intramural basketball one night, and the other team just looked at him the whole game. I think he got 36 points playing 8-minute quarters, and he was just toying with them. But I enjoy watching it because I get to coach this guy again one more year.
Well, that's how I think Mike Bobo feels about Brock Bowers, as you said, Coach, because he raved about him today.
As a play caller, it's about players and not plays. That's number one. Your job as a play caller, if a guy's got a unique ability to make plays and plays that turn into explosive, we got to find do a good job as a staff of designing plays that get him touches. As far as of getting the best out of Brock Bowers, you're going to get the best out of Brock Bowers every single day. He is not a guy that needs to be motivated. He's locked in every meeting, every walkthrough.
For sure. I mean, you just can't say enough about him. But I think one thing that helps Mike a little bit in the evolution of our offense is last year when he was an analyst here. Each analyst works with a different area, and Mike, of course, knows quarterbacks. But we had Buster Faulkner here, so Mike went with the tight end. So he's got a little bit more of a relationship maybe with Brock Bowers than he would if he was the quarterback room last year. And of course, he's got them with all of them. But you can see all the things that Coach Monk and Coach Hartley did with Brock. And that's in your wheelhouse. And you've got to not only find ways to get him the ball, but find ways to not after the game say, well, they doubled him. We couldn't do that. Hey, I don't want to hear that. Let's get him the ball so that he knows what some of the teams tried to do to inside out on him or press him or hold him up. And also you work on those the routine plays, nobody's going to defend this guy. So you got to be ready for some of these screwed up defensive looks. And I never will forget, we had a guy one time that Switzer, didn't think we were getting the ball to enough. And he just came in and said, hey, you need to see what you can do to get the ball to him a little more. And then we played another game and didn't get it. And he came in and he said, I want you to listen to me right now. Give him the football this week. Just like that. You get him the football. You understand? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He didn't want any and I'm sure Kirby did the same thing after that Ohio State game when Brock didn't touch the ball much. You looked at first quarter against TCU, you got to be kidding me. I mean, Brock Bowers show, along with Stetson Bennett, he was okay too.
Did he have like 7 touches in that first quarter?
He had enough that made me feel good about it. I can tell you that. But the thing about it is he's just such a hybrid that can do so many things, line up all these different places and inside, outside, in the backfield, all that. But, I've read 2 different guys that I don't know how good of reporters they are. I don't know them that well, saying that Brock Bowers could be the best tight end in the history of college football. Now that's going along, and he's got a chance. He's already way ahead of the guy at Florida as far as stats after 2 years, Pitts, and different type of way they used him. But we had Keith Jackson at Oklahoma, who was unbelievable. I don't think Brock can play the cello. Keith Jackson can play the cello. That was pretty impressive.
Visually, my favorite thing about Bowers is that when he gets the football, it looks like that allows him to run faster. Like he hits a different level when he's running with a football in his hands. I don't know how that works, but it's just crazy to see.
Well, he's so afraid he won't get it again. He wants to make sure he gets one in there.
I love it. Speaking of our own Dave McMahon, Stats did a kind of a statistical review of Brock Bowers. And he's like, look, I'm not going to put him in relation to the other tight ends. He already has all the Georgia records pretty much for tight ends in 2 seasons. I'm going to show you where he lines up on top wide receivers at the University of Georgia. And he's on like the top 10 list. He has a chance to be one of Georgia's all-time leading receivers at the tight, regardless of being at the tight end or wide receiver position. So that says a lot. What else you got?
Well, Todd Hartley, his coach, talked about him too, and how sometimes you have to set him off to the side so other people can work.
This is my favorite.
Go ahead. Sorry, I started to play it.
This is the best thing we heard all week. So clip this out, watch it, live it, write down everything he says, and put it on a poster.
He is the ultimate competitor. The kid don't want to lose anything. Okay, And to be honest with you, I need to see Oscar Delp get reps. Okay, I need to see Lawson Lucky and Pierce Sperling get reps. And when I take him off and limit some of his reps, he gets pissed off. He gets pissed off. Okay, I'm like, hey, Brock. He's like, what did I do wrong? Nothing, buddy. Just stand right here. It's okay.
I wish you'd let him stand there until the first game myself, but just because
Maybe the third game.
Yeah, he's going to be. It's a good situation, and everybody needs to enjoy the fact that you had a chance to be around this guy. I mean, he can be a legend here, that's for sure, and just quality guy too, really quality.
I like that there's another part of the quote where he says, look, if we have a 10-yard race, he's going to be first. If we have a 30-yard race, he's going to be first. First guy in the locker room, last guy to leave. And you guys think he doesn't like to answer questions. Oh, he absolutely loves to answer questions. We'll be in the film room, and I have to tell him, stop answering questions. Let the freshmen answer the questions. I know you know the answer. I want to hear if Pierce knows the answer. I want to hear if Lawson knows the answer. I'm sitting there trying to film this thing. I'm dying. I'm rolling. And the way Todd's like, it's okay, buddy. I just cracked up.
You mentioned the question you asked to Dell McGee about recruiting. Todd Hartley was asked a similar one about recruiting for tight ends at Georgia because he's done a pretty darn good job.
And there's not a better recruiter in the country than Kirby Smart. I'll tell you that. So when you have Coach Smart's influence, it's not as hard walking into a living room when you know you got Coach Smart behind you, right? The other thing is the power of the logo. I mean, when you got the G on your chest and you walk into a school, you get instant credibility, you get instant respect. So the fact that you got Georgia on your shirt, you got Coach Smart as your head coach, that makes the job not as hard.
That's good. I like it. We've talked about, people start talking about, well, so-and-so's not doing that great or whatever, but Kirby is a good interaction with everybody. And, he's the boss, and that's what you're always looking for, is who's the boss. But I like that point about the G, and I will just mention that one of the things I used to tell young players in the state of Georgia, I said, when you walk down the hall, your school, how many hats do you see of these other schools? You usually don't see many except Georgia. And if you say you're going to Georgia, how many people in this hall are going to be happy and how many of them are going to be sad if you don't? I said, everybody in these hallways would love to have the same opportunity you have. And very seldom, of course, we were trying to rebuild and coming off probation and all, but we started building up a pretty good talent base. But I think that's one thing you got the biggest problem, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this tonight. If you don't understand anything else from the tradition and all that, NIL is real. It is real. And we can't do anything about it by throwing up our hands and say, well, we lost him to NIL. We can't lose the guy because of NIL. It's got to be our staff's decision whether they want to go as much as somebody else. But you got to keep morale. You can't bring a guy in here making more than somebody's already playing unless he's just unreal. So you got to remember that these kids now know how to use NIL. The first couple of years, they didn't know. They were just learning. But now these guys got agents in high school. They got people telling them how they can use their money and do all these things. And, of course, their parents are saying that as a chance to, get a lifetime annuity. So it's just a situation that you can throw up your hands or you can say, hey, we got to compete. We're competing. We're doing a good job with it. And we're number one in the nation. It's not luck. We're not getting all these guys because we're we got the great facilities and academics and all. We're competing in NIL. Hey, anybody that says otherwise, you're wrong. We're doing that, but we're just not going to compete unless it's,
within reason.
Comes a point where what's reasonable and what's not.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there's some guys around the country that are making more than the guy that's coaching them next year.
Wow.
And that's on some staffs that don't make as much as some of these bigger ones, but that to me is going to be hard. And, hey, this guy's wife said, well, Johnny, you better get him in the game. He's making more than you are.
At some point, these players are going to make more in college than they will their first NFL contracts.
Well,
So.
a lot of times, and that's what's happening with that Caitlin Clark up there at Iowa. She didn't want to go at WNBA. They got a $280,000 max the first year. She's making $2 million at Iowa. So why would she go play? But I want to make this point too. If you have a company that has good advertising dollars and you want to get the bang for your buck, you can get with the Georgia Collective, and these players will pound your company, and they will say a few words, and then they'll have a video. And not only does it go on the Georgia Collective, but it's going to be on the. Aren't you going to have it, Radi, on the Rivals site?
If they'll send it to me, I absolutely will. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to putting up because it'll be the players. They'll be talking about the products, but there'll also be the interesting stuff from the players. So
and then they've got social media. Their parents put it on Facebook. I mean, you can get 2-3 million exposures on that, and for a limited amount of money that you would pay for advertising, and write it off. But help.
I just think that's where it's going. It's going to be corporate. I mean, you can't keep asking the big donors, and I know a bunch of them, to say, hey, look, we need more money. We need more money. We need more money. When you have these corporate marketing departments, it's like, hey, spend less on radio and TV and mailers.
Right. If
Get Brock Bowers to sell your product.
If you're saying, hey, well, let me help get this guy, I'll give some money to NIL. Well, you don't have to just give it. You can get some advertising out of it. So there's a way to do that. So I think that's something everybody needs. You're just going to be donor poor, where all these donors just ask that. You just can't keep coming up with that. Particularly, you saw Texas A&M yesterday. They were using the deal where they were getting the donors and getting a tax break, and the IRS said, hey, you can't do it. So A&M's 12th man thing's been disbanded, but I'm sure they'll just go on and play for them under the table now. I don't know how they'll do it, but they'll do something.
Well, and then there was a headline that Florida State was using some kind of donor growth. It was some kind of weird way that they were trying to get money involved in some financial firm.
No, that's for they've talked to an investment firm about a private equity fund about getting a loan for them so they can pay off their MMR that they owe. Their grant of rights for them to leave the conference. They got an exorbitant fee, so they'd like to borrow the money from one of these people, these brokerage firms. And I don't know who's going to take Florida State though. I mean, SEC's not, Big Ten's not, maybe Pac-12, but I like Florida State. But I mean, I just don't see anybody taking them right now. I mean,
yeah, I don't either.
Hey, I had one final thought real fast just on the head coaches or the assistant coaches, excuse me. I knew Mike Bobo has been a head coach before. I know how good he is. Dell McGee, I think, is head coach quality. Same with Glenn Schumann. He's on that trajectory. I was really impressed with Todd Hartley and how he handled that microphone. He was really, really good, and we don't get to see that very much. And I looked at that, and I was like, this guy can run a program. He's been well-trained.
He's got the title now, assistant head coach, so that's pretty good.
Yep. He did a great job. And I actually missed part of the when he walked in, the way he addressed the room. I was still setting the cameras up, so he was even better than anticipated. Hey, we were talking about if you own a business, you can be a part of the Georgia NIL thing without the money coming out of your pocket, or not even if you own a business, if you work at one. Well, I want to mention our friends at Europe because they kind of did the same thing. They had a deal with a promotion with Malachi Starks. They have him as one of their spokesmen. So they've given to the UGA Classic City Collective, and there was one point where they had a Malachi Starks night. You go in, he's signing autographs, he's making pizzas for people, everybody's getting a picture taken with him, and he is a good ambassador for that company. So again, the folks at Europe, they look, we have this marketing money. We could advertise on UGASports, or we could pay Malachi Starks, and they get him for a song. So my point is, here is proof of concept where someone has said, look, we want to use some of our marketing money and we'll use it with the university. And there's your pie's all over the place. So they could be doing this with a Clemson. They could be doing it with a Auburn. They could be doing it with all sorts of schools. But I know that, the founders of the whole thing are diehard Georgia fans. And look, it's the second time they've done a good proof of concept, because you see on the screen there, they've got the Lineage Supreme, the Great White, the Ishka, the Hot Honey Barbecue, all these fantastic pizzas that they created. The whole concept was something that they came up with, and it's been a raging success. And of course, they've turned that to NIL as well. So I'm also mentioning somebody else who came up with a great concept and is just killing it. It's our friends over at My Perfect Franchise, Andy Ludecki. Andy has, he went into the franchise business saying, look, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own company. I don't want to be working for somebody else. And he did that. He opened up like 3, 4, 5 different franchises. And he said, I've done so much research. I can help other people do this. And that's what he's been doing. He's been doing it everywhere. He's been doing it at a bunch of the rival sites. People who want to get out of the rat race, who want to have a better future, more time off, more control over their career. They've been going to Andy Ludecki at MyPerfectFranchise.net. They call him up. He helps them. It doesn't cost you a dime to do it. So check him out when you get a chance.
Let's sneak in Dead Soxy real fast, too, so we can end with questions.
Yep. I do want to mention our friends at Dead Soxy. That's another proof of concept where they came up with one. They're actually doing some NIL with Ole Miss. There's a couple Ole Miss grads. But they also make socks for Georgia fans, Alabama fans, South Carolina fans, North Carolina fans. They make socks all over the place. But right, the first toe in the water, unintended there, is with Ole Miss, because they did the licensing thing. So they have an NIL deal with Ole Miss. They're looking to do one with Georgia. They're looking to do one with Alabama, because again, they're trying to get the word out about their fantastic socks. If you've ever tried Dead Soxy, you know that they're great. And if they can get a pair on your feet, they've hooked you. They know that they'll become your favorite pair. You won't want to wear anything else, and you'll buy more. And if they can do that through making great red and black socks, lucky socks, and maybe have a couple of Georgia guys pitching them, then they'll be very successful. So shout out to Dead Soxy for also making a good proof of concept, as Coach was talking about.
Let's get to questions from members of UGAsports.com, and we'll start with this one from Big Old Dog. It says, Coach, what's your take on Alabama's quarterback room based on what you've heard? Are they the old Bama where they control and go back to ground and pound?
I'm not sure. I saw where Pete Rose had talked to him about gambling. I think they got Phil Mickelson coming in there tomorrow.
That's a joke, Radi. I hope you know that's a joke.
I know.
They've got 3 good players. I think they're making the trend back to running the ball a little bit more with Tommy Rees coming in from Notre Dame. Obviously, the fact that Notre Dame's guy came there had to feel like he had a shot. I like both Simpson and Milroe. I don't know enough about them. I think their defense is going to be better this year. For sure, they've got more players, particularly up front. But offensively, I don't know how good their O-line is, and that's going to be. And the receivers are not as deep as they've been. They've got some good players, but got good backs. But I don't know enough about which guys are going to make the move. If they want to run more quarterback runs, Milroe can do it. If they want to run Reed's system a little more, that's Buchner or whatever his name would be, the guy. So.
Question from YouTube. Jeff says, I'm hearing good news about Jackson Meeks. Can you confirm, Coach?
Jackson Meeks is a really good special teams player. Got a tough road to hoe with some of the guys in front of him. He's a bigger receiver, a good blocker, and a good receiver. Doesn't have a real blazing speed, but good attitude. Kirby's high on him on the special teams. I don't see him being in the too deep at this point, but maybe I haven't watched him practice, so I don't know. If he's hearing that, maybe he is. I don't know.
I was watching practice, and Mike Bobo was giving him hell. So, but again, he is a big body.
Saying that stuff, you can't tell him, man.
Hey, he lets us out there. We're not going to not say what we didn't see. Kirby was. Mike Bobo.
That's your deal. You love to go out there and hear who he's getting on, don't you?
Well, yeah, because that's usually the guys that turn out to be the best ones.
Okay.
When he's dog cussing Jamal Jarrett, go back to Richard LeCount, Michael Williams. If he's dog cussing them, then that's somebody he wants to see do something. But this was Mike Bobo getting on to Jackson Meeks, and I'm looking at like who's number? Is that a tight end? That's a big boy.
Number 9, isn't he? Number 9.
He's number 9, and I really, I got out my look. I'm like, who the hell is that? So he's a big boy, and I mean, again, if they're not talking to you, if they're not on your case, then that means they don't expect much from you.
Right.
From Bucket 3075, as Georgia's head coaches leave to other schools like Buster Faulkner to Georgia Tech or Sam Pittman to Arkansas, do you completely revamp signals year over year, or is that something that's done every year anyway, whether or not you lose coaches?
Well, I think you got to be really aware of that when you play those teams, but there's a certain amount of things that you do for every team. We were worried about Clemson stealing our signals. They're notorious for that when Venables were there. So we came up with several different ways. We had some armbands. We had quick huddle. We had a lot of different ways. Messenger, run the play in with a guy. But stealing the signals is something you worry about for sure. And you play somebody that is on the other sideline, then you definitely change them some.
Big Dog 2, coach, with the new quarterback, new starter at running back, new offensive coordinator. Could you estimate what the pass run ratio might be?
We're to win in this league, you got to be able to run the ball and stop the run. You got to be able to do that, but you got to be able to make explosive plays. I would say 55-45 probably, based on the fact that we're going to be ahead so much that we'll be running the clock the second half. But I could see us looking to throw the ball because of the receivers we have. And we got some guys. We got 3 guys, and I don't want to eliminate. Of course, we got Bowers, but McConkey, Lovett, and Rah. When they get the ball, even if somebody has a hard time standing up, they're going to stand up in Sanford Stadium. Because you're going to say, I don't want to miss this guy showing me the tail light. And then, of course, Arian Smith can go deep. Bell, some people aren't talking about him enough. I mean, this guy's a powerful receiver. I mean, he's really good. He's like a running back, a receiver. Great on the screens. And of course, we know what Rosemy St. Jack, he's tough too. But those 3 guys now can show you their taillights.
This question from OU Herschel Walker says, Coach, did Kosi, Coleman, Deion, Grant, Jamal Lewis make as much money combined as KJ Bolden was promised?
They did good, but we wanted them. We wanted those guys, but Augusta paper came out 3 days before the signing date and said Georgia's going on probation, and we didn't have a chance with all 3 of them. I don't know what they got, but they got something. But they were all 3 good players.
And we'll wrap with this one. Red and Black in the Day had a lot of questions. I'll keep some of these for next week. But he said, old-time Georgia Bulldogs remember Wally Butts as the innovator of the pass. Coach, who taught you the most about the passing game, and when did you begin to consider it as equally viable of a play-calling option?
Well, 2 guys had tremendous influence on me. One was Bill Walsh. When I was a young coach, I visited Stanford, and he spent 2 days with me showing me all his concepts and all the minute details of route running and all that. And then when a little bit later on, I spent some time with Don Coryell and the Chargers on their system, and we implemented the 3-digit numbers where you go weak to strong, like 7, like if you said 999, all 3 guys are running a deep route, 888 to run a post, 646 would be square in with all the way down 1 through 9. And it was easy to teach for formation. If you're on the weak side, you're the first number. If you're in the middle, you're the second and third number as the outside. So learn the 3-digit from him. And then I guess those were the 2 of the biggest influences on me as far as teaching the passing game.
And then it goes full circle. Where did Mike Bobo learn some of this?
Yeah, Mike learned a lot from his dad, technique-wise. I mean, his dad's a very good fundamental coach. He's worked a lot with quarterbacks. And then, I saw Kirby's dad tonight, and he was talking about Kirby playing Little League football growing up in Bainbridge because Kirby's boy's playing tonight, Andrew. And he's really a player now. I just hope he gets some help, gets some protection. But it was fun seeing Coach Smart, and he was always real supportive of me when I was a coach, along with Coach Lamb. But anyhow, I missed you guys last week, and I want to make sure that I get this joke in tonight. Are we about finished up here?
Yes,
It's
sir.
time for the joke.
So there's old country barber shop out there, and this guy walks in the barber shop and says, "How's it going today?" And the barber said, "Busy, busy." So he leaves and comes back in there 2 days later. He says, "How's it going?" He said, "Busy, busy." Comes back the next day, and he said, "What's the situation?" He said, "Busy." And then so the barber says to this guy that's in there, said, "Look, this guy's come in there 4 days out of the last 5, and he just leaves, and he doesn't sit down and wait." He says, "Could you follow him and see what's going on?" He said, "Yeah, I'll follow him." So he follows him, and he comes back, and he said, "Well, did you follow him?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Where'd he go?" He said, "To your house."
Oh, I should have seen
Glad
that.
to know
I
that
should
guy
have
was
seen
busy.
that.
He was glad to know he was busy.
Damn, I should have.
Busy, busy.
Funny.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week.
Meet our standards or not.
That does that. Hey, if you're either a leader or you're not, Coach.
One thing I want to say that I, from my perspective, I was gone last week, but I just want to give you two guys and the rest of the rival staff a lot of credit because I was not privy to any information when I was gone. And if you're a Georgia fan and you're not around here, I mean, you got several ways to look at things, but just read this site. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I felt like I was watching practice, listening to you guys talk about everything. And it's hard for me to give you too much love. You get a little bit too, but it's really good, all the different ways that you cover Georgia. And I just think people should be glad that they got you because it's when you're not around, it helps. And when you're around, it helps. But I kept up with everything out there when I was taking a few days off. And it was fun to hear what was going on. But it was also nice to not worry about it a little bit, too, because when I'm here, I worry about the same things you do, injuries and all that, just like anybody does. But I still feel like this can be hard. I mean, we're going to have to lose to somebody. I mean, I just don't see anybody beating us. We're going to have to give it to them.
Yeah, and that sounds like what Kirby was concerned with, and Mike Bobo, when he's talking about what he wants from his quarterbacks is don't give anybody easy points or anything easy. Make them win it the hard way. So, anyway, folks, we appreciate everybody put up with our a couple schedule changes we had, but I thought it was great that we were able to get all 4 coaches onto the show.
That was good. Good.
I love doing that. I love for you guys to hear these coaches. The more access we got from Kirby, it makes our show better, and we appreciate him letting those other guys speak. And it's also good for those guys. It shines their star a little bit. So great stuff. Hopefully we get to speak to them as well next week or in the coming weeks. But worst case scenario, if we don't get to talk to anybody before next Tuesday, we know we're supposed to get Kirby Smart this Saturday. We will pester him with a ton of questions about the scrimmage they have. He'll tell us some things, and other things he'll be like, y'all are making too big a deal out of this. And we will be here next Tuesday at noon to make a big deal out of all the small things and just argue about it.
That's good, Radi. And any of you guys that go to the scrimmage, I think you're really smart putting it out that what's happening. I think that's very disloyal. I think
it's a good idea. Tell me.
I know you do, Radi, but I'm just saying you got a chance to represent Georgia and you're helping them, but it's a closed practice. So what goes on there is not supposed to be put out. So don't be telling that stuff.
Tell me. It's okay. All right, folks. We'll see you next